Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, the topic of our today's discussion is acute diarrheal diseases. Diarrhea is defined as the passage of loose, liquid, or watery stools. These liquid stools are usually passed more than 3 times a day. However, it is the recent change in the consistency and character of stools rather than the number of stools that is more important. Dear students, based on the underlying pathology and altered physiology, 4 clinical types of diarrheal diseases they have been recognized. It is important to recognize the particular type of diarrhea so that the appropriate treatment can be initiated. These 4 types of diarrhea include acute watery diarrhea, acute bloody diarrhea, persistent diarrhea, and diarrhea with severe malnutrition. First of all, we will discuss acute watery diarrhea. Acute watery diarrhea lasts for several hours to days. In it, the main danger is dehydration. Weight loss may also occur if the feeding is not continued. The pathogens which usually cause acute diarrhea, acute watery diarrhea include Vibrio cholerae, E. coli, and rotavirus. Then comes the acute bloody diarrhea. It is also known as dysentery. The main dangers are the damage of intestinal mucosa, sepsis, and malnutrition. Dehydration may also occur. It is marked by the visible blood in the stools. The most common cause of bloody diarrhea is Shigella. Diarrhea which lasts for 14 days or longer is known as persistent diarrhea. The main danger in persistent diarrhea is malnutrition and serious non-intestinal infection. Dehydration may also occur. Persons with other illnesses, especially those who are suffering from AIDS, they are more likely to develop persistent diarrhea. Then the last type is diarrhea with severe malnutrition, that is associated with marasmus and kwashiorkor. In it, the main dangers are severe systemic infection, dehydration, heart failure, and vitamin and mineral deficiency. The term diarrheal diseases, they basically should be expressed only as a convenient expression. Otherwise, these indicate a group of diseases in which the predominant symptom is diarrhea. After respiratory tract infections, acute diarrhea is a major cause of morbidity on a worldwide scale. Diarrhea is a major killer of children under 5, although its death toll has dropped by a third over the past decade. Acute diarrhea kills more than 1,600 children under the age of 5 years every day in 2012. It accounts for 9% of all the deaths under 5 years of age, and for children under 5 years of age, a median of 3 episodes of diarrhea occur per child. Unfortunately, after emergencies and natural disaster, diarrhea is a leading cause of death. Displacement of the population, overcrowding, poor sanitation in the camps, poor personal hygiene, contaminated food and water supply, they all favor the spread of diarrhea. Now we will discuss the epidemiological determinants of acute diarrhea. First of all, we will discuss the agent factors. A wide assortment of organisms they cause the diarrhea, and many of them they have been discovered only in recent years. In developing countries, diarrhea is almost universally infectious in origin. A number of bacteria, viruses, and other organisms they cause diarrhea. The commonly involved viruses include rotavirus, astrovirus, adenovirus, calicivirus, coronavirus, and the commonly involved bacteria which cause diarrhea include Campylobacter, enterotoxigenic E. coli, Shigella, Salmonella, Vibrio cholerae, Bacillus cereus, Clostridium difficile, and few others. Then few other organisms are also there, that is Entamoeba histolytica, Giardia, Cryptosporidium, etc. This table is showing you the pathogens which are frequently identified in children with acute diarrhea in developing countries. Among the viruses, rotavirus is the most frequent cause of diarrhea, and it is responsible for 15 to 25% of the cases. In bacterial cases, enterotoxigenic E. coli, Shigella, Campylobacter jejuni, Vibrio cholerae, Salmonella, enteropathogenic E. coli, in protozoan Cryptosporidium. They are, these are all involved in causing diarrhea. Reservoir of infection. For some enteric pathogens, man is the principal reservoir, and thus most transmission they originate from host factors. Examples are enterotoxigenic E. coli, Shigella, Vibrio cholerae, Giardia lamblia, and Entamoeba histolytica. For other enteric pathogens, animals they are important reservoir, and transmission originates from both the animal and the human feces. Examples are Campylobacter jejuni, Salmonella species, and Yersinia enterocolitica. For viral agents of diarrhea, unfortunately, the role of animal reservoirs in human cases in human disease remains unknown. Now we will discuss the host factors. Diarrhea is most common in children, especially those in the age groups between 6 months to 2 years. Incidence is highest in the age group between 6 to 11 months when the weaning occurs. Why at this age group? It reflects the combined effects of declining levels of maternal acquired antibodies between the 6 to 11 months, the lack of active immunity in the infant, the introduction of contaminated food, and also the direct contact of the baby with human or animal feces when the infant starts to crawl. It is also common in babies under 6 months of age, especially in babies who are fed on cow's milk or infant feeding formulas. Malnutrition leads to infection, and infection leads to diarrhea, and which leads to a vicious cycle. Poverty, prematurity, reduced gastric acidity, immunodeficiency, lack of personal and domestic hygiene, and incorrect feeding practices. They are all important contributory host factors. Environmental factors. Distinct seasonal patterns of diarrhea, they occur in many geographical areas. Bacterial diarrhea, they occur more frequently during the warm, rainy season. In Pakistan, it is the monsoon season during which the bacterial diarrhea occur more in frequency. Whereas the whereas the viral diarrhea, particularly the diarrhea caused by rotavirus, occurs throughout the year, however increasing in frequency during the drier and cool months. Most of the pathogenic organisms that cause diarrhea, they are transmitted primarily or exclusively by the fecal-oral route. Fecal-oral transmission may be waterborne, foodborne, or direct transmission, that is via infected fingers or infected fomites or dirt, which may be ingested by the young children. Dear students, we have discussed that many different organisms, some of them are known and some of them they are probably unknown, they cause diarrhea. And also all of these organisms, they act in a different way to cause diarrhea. That is, they don't all act in the same way to cause diarrhea. The pathological mechanism is different. They are all considered together from an epidemiological point of view because of a common symptom of diarrhea. Oral rehydration therapy is the main treatment element which is advocated by WHO and UNICEF. The Diarrheal Disease Control Program of WHO advocates the intervention measures, and these intervention measures can be classified as followed. Short-term measures, which includes appropriate clinical management, and the long-term measures, which includes better maternal and child health care practices, better preventive strategies, and preventing the diarrheal epidemics. Appropriate clinical management includes oral rehydration therapy, which will be discussed in detail in the next slide, intravenous rehydration, maintenance therapy, appropriate feeding, chemotherapy, and zinc supplementation. These points will be discussed briefly. Intravenous rehydration is usually required only for the rehydration of severely dehydrated patients who are unable to drink or take orally. The solutions which are recommended by the World Health Organization for infusion are ringer lactate solution and the diarrhea treatment solution. Then comes the maintenance therapy. Once the initial fluid and electrolyte deficit they have been corrected and the patient condition improves and now he or she can take orally, then the individual should be encouraged to take orally as much as they want to satisfy their thirst. Appropriate feeding. Breastfeeding should be continued. Children, especially infants, who are showing little or no signs of dehydration, they can be treated by breastfeeding alone. However, those who are showing moderate to severe signs of dehydration, they should be recommended to receive ORS solution and the breastfeeding should be continued. Chemotherapy. The choice of antibiotics depends upon the causative agent involved. Zinc supplementation. When a zinc supplement is given, during an episode of acute diarrhea, it has been shown that zinc supplementation reduces the episode's duration and severity. In addition, zinc supplements given for 10 to 14 days, they lower the incidence of diarrhea in the following 2 to 3 months. So WHO and UNICEF, they recommend daily intake of 10 milligram of zinc for infants under the age of 6 months and 20 milligram for children older than age of 6 months for 10 to 14 days. Oral rehydration therapy is the most important step for the treatment of patients who are suffering from acute diarrhea. With the introduction of oral rehydration by WHO, it is now firmly established that the oral rehydration treatment can be safely and successfully administered to all acute diarrheal cases, irrespective of the pathogens involved, and in all age groups and in all countries. The aim of the oral rehydration therapy is to reduce the and prevent the and correct the dehydration and reduce mortality. Recently, WHO introduced the reduced osmolarity ORS. Because of the improved effectiveness of the reduced osmolarity ORS, WHO now advocates the countries to use this reduced osmolarity ORS. The composition of reduced osmolarity ORS includes sodium chloride 2.6 gram per liter, glucose 13.5 gram per liter, potassium chloride 1.5 gram per liter, trisodium citrate dihydrate 2.9 grams per liter. If the WHO mixture of salt is not available, a simple mixture consisting of table salt, 1 level teaspoon, and sugar 6 level teaspoon, they can be dissolved in 1 liter of boiled drinking water and it may be safely used until the proper mixture is obtained. It is important to assess the level of dehydration of the patient. This table is showing you the difference and distinguish points between mild dehydration and severe dehydration. In case of mild dehydration, patient is thirsty, alert, and restless. But in case of severe dehydration, patient is drowsy, cold, sweaty, and may be comatose. In case of mild dehydration, radial pulse is of normal rate and volume, but in severe dehydration, it is rapid, feeble. Blood pressure may be normal in case of mild dehydration, but it is less than 80 millimeter of mercury in case of severe dehydration. Skin elasticity. In mild dehydration, pinch retracts immediately, while in case of severe dehydration, pinch retracts very slowly, more than 2 seconds. Tongue is moist in mild dehydration. In severe dehydration, tongue is very dry. Anterior fontanelle, they are normal in mild dehydration. In severe dehydration, they are sunken. Urine flow in mild dehydration is normal, but in severe dehydration, it is very little to none. Weight loss is about 4 to 5% in mild dehydration, but in severe dehydration, it is 10% or more. Estimated fluid deficit in case of mild dehydration is 40 to 50 ml per kg body weight, but in severe dehydration, it is 100 to 110 milliliter per kg body weight. In long-term diarrheal disease control measures, the first is better maternal and child healthcare practices. Better maternal and child healthcare practices focus on maternal nutrition and child nutrition. Maternal nutrition, improving the prenatal nutrition will reduce the low birth weight problem of the babies. Prenatal and postnatal nutrition will also improve the quality of the breast milk. Child nutrition. Child nutrition is very important. Child nutrition includes promotion of breastfeeding. Breastfeeding reduces the chances of diarrheal diseases in infants. A breastfed child is very much less likely to suffer from severe dehydration, severe diarrhea, and death than the bottle-fed baby. So, every effort should be done to promote the breastfeeding. Appropriate weaning practices. Poor weaning practices, they are a major risk factor for diarrhea. It is the weaning practices which puts the child at high risk for developing diarrhea. Supplementary feeding. Supplementary feeding, they are basically necessary to improve the nutritional status of the children aged 6 months and older. Once the supplementary food is introduced, the child enters the category of high risk category. Vitamin A supplementation is very important and critical preventive measure because the studies have shown that vitamin A supplementation reduces the mortality from 19% to 54% in children who receive the vitamin A supplementation. Preventive strategies include sanitation, health education, immunization, and fly control. Sanitation. Sanitation is very important. Improving the sanitation, both the personal and the domestic, greatly reduces the number of cases of diarrhea. Simple hygienic measures like washing the hands with soap before preparing food, before eating, before feeding a child, after defecation, after cleaning a child, they all should be promoted. Health education. Health workers should aim at educating the community regarding adopting the simple preventive measures of breastfeeding, improved weaning, use of clean drinking water, proper disposal of stools, immunization, especially against rotavirus vaccine. And recently the rotavirus vaccine, it has been introduced in the EPI schedule. Fly control. Fly control reduces the number of cases of diarrhea. Control and or prevention of diarrheal epidemics requires a strengthening of epidemiological surveillance systems. Primary health care. The concept of primary healthcare involves the delivery of a package of curative and preventive services at the community level. It involves clean water supply, safe excreta disposal, communicable disease control, maternal and child health nutrition, and health education. And all of these elements they are regarded as the essential elements for the ultimate control of diarrheal diseases. This concludes our today's lecture. Thank you very much.